Okay, so this is the third module, legal and ethical ground rules. Let's get into the ethical ground rules first. I believe those are more important. Legal rules are made up by some government and they are good to have for different reasons. However, the ethical ones are the most important. You want to be an open and known donor because it's the only consensual way to have a child with a recipient. What I mean by that is if you are a serial donor and the recipient doesn't know, the recipient believes my child will have 5 half-siblings, 10 half-siblings, something like that, whatever. The lying or anonymous donor, and being anonymous is no different than lying, you're hiding the truth. You don't know what you're getting, and the recipient doesn't know what she's getting. You don't want a recipient to tell you that she is healthy and then she's a drug addict, right? Of course, everyone has to do their screening. And of course, we help a lot with that. And our network of professional donors, just as the network of recipients that we find for our donors and the other way around, are very healthy and trusted. It's super important that you have this kind of consent, that everyone knows what's going on, what's going to happen, and how many half-siblings are around right now, and what the donor is kind of planning. You can never tell what's going to happen in the future. I myself don't know if I'm going to help 10 or 50 families. Probably more than 10 because I'm already at 10 families, but I don't know where I'm going to stop or when I'm going to focus more on my work as a donor consultant and fertility consultant and less on my work as a private known donor myself. So it's important to have agreements. It's important to make agreements before you go into helping the recipient. I generally think you shouldn't involve natural insemination agreements with your recipients for different reasons. First of all, that can involve emotional backlash and problems. That's something I've heard a lot, right? You want to keep it professional, you want to keep it private, you want to keep it real, kinda, not really real because natural insemination is the real way, but if you do it the natural insemination way, you expose yourself to more risks. Risks like STDs, STIs, but also risks legally. So it is important to make sure that you have the consent and that you have agreements. Also, you should have a donor-recipient agreement on paper. When we consult and teach the donors that we work with, we make sure that they have the right agreements for the right areas. We are not lawyers, but we can help with a lot of that. We can help find the right lawyers. We can help draft contracts that should work, however, should work, because there's also areas in the world where a judge can decide whether or not something was a donation or the donor should pay child support, which is why I always say if you want to be completely safe, you should have multiple passports and you should make sure that your business stream of income is not in a country where a recipient can sue you. That might sound scary. If you find and screen the right recipients, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get into trouble. I would say the percentage of problems I've heard in the donor community in general were about 1%, so 1 out of 100 recipients. So even if you screen very well, it can happen, which is why you may want to make sure you have the right agreements. And if you want to make 100% sure, you should not donate in areas where there is no legal agreement possible, right? There's countries where there is no such thing as a donor agreement, but there's also countries and places where you just have to double down on safety, make sure that you have multiple passports and a stream of income that cannot be gone after, no assets under your name, which is what I do to make sure that the recipients I have, even though I trust them very dearly and we have a friendship connection between me and the recipients, I still wanted to double down and make sure that there's no mistakes I can make on that end. But in business, people know you should do it anyways. You shouldn't have too many assets under your name. People can sue you. Your partner might go after your income, whatever. So in the world of business and entrepreneurship, which is where I'm from, you learn and know that you don't want to have too much under your name. But again, I'm saying there's a lot of places, a lot of areas where you can be a private and known donor with the right contracts to make sure no one can sue you. Even if you're a multimillionaire or billionaire, there is options. So that's not something you have to be careful of in some areas. One more thing is something I do myself. I stay within donation limits by country and internationally. I don't have to. In some countries, they have a 10-child limit when it comes to, in the UK, there's a 10-child limit for clinics, but there's no limit for private donors. So some donors go crazy. The serial donors that are not professional don't really know what they're doing. They just want a lot of babies. That's their goal. They don't have any deeper purpose besides having a lot of babies. That's their deep purpose. With these guys and in those countries, I think it's important to stay in donation limits. First of all, because you want to make sure that you keep it professional. Second of all, because I believe that it's important that you have some sort of limitation that you keep in mind. If you and your recipients say more than 10 children is a good thing, then go ahead. I tell my recipients that I'm going to involve them in the discussion. If I ever got to more than 50 families, which is unrealistic because I also want a family myself, I want a healthy life, I want to travel, I want to not donate to everyone. I screen out about 80 to 90% of recipients. I just filter out for mental health reasons, physical health reasons, often or most of the time financial health reasons, because I'm not a cheap donor and I will never be a cheap donor. I've learned that the hard way, I'd say, because it just costs you a lot of time to spend time with people that don't even have money for a donor. I'm not going to help them with a child, because if you don't have the money for a donor, you shouldn't be having a child. At least that's my opinion. So yeah, that's module 3, legal and ethical ground rules. I hope this can help you guys if you want to take a deeper dive, or if you want to learn more about what we do for donors and for men that want to be donors in protecting them legally. We do that as well. We help with that as well. We make sure that we give everything we know, and we share contracts for different areas as well. So if you're looking for that, if you're looking for help with that, you can also sign up for the Sperm Donor Association or the extended course and reach out to me.